but I would go much further. And I'm going to leave you with that. I think an economic system that works in the ways I've just gone through with you, that ends up sending money to China, that leaves people unemployed, that leaves people losing their homes. You know, we are a wonderful country. We now have a record number of homeless people side by side with a record number of unoccupied homes. We are a country in which we line up the homeless people to stare across the street at the empty homes. This is crazy. What is happening here? A society that does that twice in a major way in 75 years. And there were 12 business cycles between the end of the Great Depression and the crisis now. A system as unstable as this, as costly socially as this, is a system that this population ought to have the courage to question. The Cold War is 20 years behind us. 20 years ago, Americans were afraid to question capitalism because that might make you disloyal and be a proponent of communism or socialism. The socialism and communism of Russia is over, of Eastern Europe is gone, and the Chinese look more like us every day anyway. So maybe now we can have the courage to say, can't we do better? Can't we do better than this? Do we have to live with this? What would be an alternative? Well, some of you think that the alternative to capitalism is planning and public property as opposed to private property and markets. That's the way the New York Times sees it. I don't. Here's the alternative I would leave you with. Suppose we organized business differently in the United States. Instead of having the majority of people in every job come to work Monday through Friday, do the work, go home, leave behind the work they do, so that the people who make the decisions what to produce, how to produce, where to produce, what to do with the profits, are whom in our culture? The board of directors of a major corporation. What is the board of directors? 15 to 20 people, that's the average number. And who puts them in that position? The major shareholders, about 15 or 20 people usually. 15 or 20 people select the board of directors, 15 or 20 people who tell you what to do, how to do it, when to do it, where to do it. Suppose we reorganized businesses in America so that it worked like this. Monday to Thursday you come and you do whatever your job has always been. Friday you come to work, but you don't do your regular job. Instead, all day Friday, you and all the other workers have the following job description. You sit around all day and have meetings, and there you decide together what to produce, how to produce, where to produce, and what to do with the profits. No board of directors, no shareholders. Wow. Guess what would have happened in the 1970s if businesses were run like that? You think the workers would have stopped raising their wages? Unlikely. You think the workers would have moved production out of the country? Unlikely. Our entire economic history would have been completely different. Now, is this a pie-in-the-sky crazy idea that could never work? I don't think so. And here's my proof. Over the last 50 years, groups of American workers have been doing exactly this every year. Many of them. But I'm going to give you one example. It's in a place called Silicon Valley. It's a wonderful part of California, just below San Francisco, running south along the bay to San Jose. It's a center of the computer and telecommunications industry of the United States, indeed of the world. Every year the following thing happens. Engineers, people who specialize in making software but also some hardware, quit their jobs. They're working for companies like IBM and so forth, big traditional companies with a board of directors that makes all the decisions. They quit the company. They're making good money. They're trained technology engineers. And when they're asked, why do you quit? Their answer is, I hate that job. I hate that I have to come to work with a tie and a jacket. I hate it that somebody who knows nothing about software is giving me instructions what to do, how to do, when to do, what to... I hate that. I hate the stultifying atmosphere. So I quit. And together with other people who feel like me, we're all going to take our laptops and we're all going to gather in Harry's garage. And there's going to be a new rule in our new little business. No board of directors, no shareholders. Nobody tells anybody else what to do. We all get together, and Monday through Thursday, that's where I got the example, we come to work and we make software. And on Friday, we don't come to work to make software. We sit around and we decide what to do, how to do, where to do it, when to do it, and what to do with the profits. And when you ask these people, why do you do this? They say two things. I'm a much happier person working in that situation, and I'm much more productive. Now I ask myself, what are they telling me? And I actually went with students and interviewed them. I learned fascinating things. Most of these people are Republicans. And when I tell them, you know, this moving away from a capitalist enterprise and organizing a collective enterprise, that pretty much summarizes the proposal made by this German fellow years ago named Karl Marx. They look at me as if I had just urinated on their shoes. They're really disappointed. They're very unhappy. They don't want to know what I just said. And they've been very happy all their lives since they never read a word of Karl Marx and said, we're not troubled by any of this. And I said, tell me why you like this job. They said, because I feel really good about my work and my fellows. I don't have to wear those clothes. I can bring a Frisbee. I wear a Hawaiian shirt. And over lunch, I smoke a joint. And I like this better. And I don't want to go back to that other kind of job. And here's the thing you might want to think about. Many of the greatest breakthroughs in computer technology were made by exactly these kinds of firms. So that the boast you will hear that the great breakthroughs in technology are the product of the capitalist system in the United States is a mistake. It's actually the product of communal enterprises. And if we weren't so scared of the word, I wouldn't use the adjective communal. I'd use the slightly different adjective drawn from the same root, communist. Because it's what it is. Do you know who else organizes production in this manner? Many religious orders. Many of you buy jams made by monks. And if you look at how they organize the work, no shareholders, no board of directors. Monday to Thursday, the good nuns plant the strawberries and cultivate the fields. And on Friday, they get together and decide how to produce, what to produce, where to produce, and what to do with the money. And if you tried to tell them that they were communists, they'd really get upset. But you know, social systems don't come into being because people are aware of it. Capitalism wasn't set up by people who said, we want to set up capitalism. The word capitalism came much later than the activity that brought it into being. There are Americans who are voting with their feet against the system that got us to this. The stunning thing for me, and that I hope will be at least engaging for you, is the system we have that allows, in the core of the production arrangements of our society, for there to be a fundamental animosity. The businessmen don't want to pay higher wages if they don't have to, because they're better off if they don't. The workers want to get more for their wages, because they're better off if they can. They are at each other. And periodically, this conflict, nestled in the core of our production system, makes us go nutty as a society and damages us. It's long past due that we face up to it and ask, if all of this happened because of decisions made by employers and employees over the organization of business and the paying of wages and the earning of profits, maybe we ought to organize business differently. Another way to say it. Americans like democracy. They like the idea that in the neighborhood where you live, in the town where you reside, you shouldn't have people telling you how to live, where to live, when to live. You should have the ability to vote for people, to vote them out of office if you're displeased with them. In other words, the people who are living with the results of the decisions of our community leaders should have power over them. I like that idea. I suppose most of you do. So here's a question. If that's a good idea in the community, how come it isn't a good idea at the workplace? How come? Why do we permit the workplace to be a place where you come, you do what you're told, how you're told, when you're told, where you're told, and when you're done, you go home and you leave behind what you've done, and your say over what's done with that is zero. You accept that. Why? If it isn't working well, if it produces 2 collapses in 75 years and 16 business downturns in between, and if it has half the qualities we've just gone through, what is your loyalty to that system? Wouldn't it be better to say that we ought to try democracy at the workplace? And if that doesn't work, here's the last one. Americans like freedom of choice. Here's a thought. Let's give the next generation of Americans a new freedom of choice. On the one hand, we'll have enterprises that are organized in the collective, in the traditional way. Board of directors, shareholders, you come, you do what you're told, you go home. On the other hand, a collectively operated enterprise. Let the people choose. Let Americans have a real choice. Let's see how you feel and how you work in the one, and let's compare it with how you work in the other. But in order for Americans to have freedom of choice, you'd have to have those enterprises in existence. Here's another freedom of choice. Maybe you'd like to choose between a shirt produced by a conventional manufacturer and a shirt produced by a collective of workers. You know the way you now choose between regular coffee and fair-traded coffee? Well, maybe you'd like to choose between coffee produced by a capitalist enterprise and coffee produced by a cooperative or a commune of workers. Maybe they're better coffee. We'll never know. And how would this be done? Easy. The government would subsidize such enterprises. You know, our government already subsidizes certain enterprises. We have something in America called the Small Business Administration. It takes government money and helps little businesses to even the playing field between them and the big ones. We give money to minority-owned businesses to give them a leg up. Well, here's a thought. How about government help for communally organized businesses? Businesses organized by workers. Here's a thought. We could go to the 15 million unemployed Americans and say, here's a government program. All of you that have the gumption, the wherewithal, the desire, you form new enterprises, we'll give you a cheap loan to get you going, to give you a job, to let you get underway because you're trying this new kind of enterprise which we want the American people to look at and have choice about. You may not agree with what I said. That's not the point. But ask yourself as my concluding shot, why have we not questioned the system we live under? Why have we not explored these alternatives? Why have we not faced how we got into this crisis? And why have we not confronted the absolutely absurd way we're trying, quote, to cope with it? If you can't answer those questions quickly and easy, that means you're aware that something is wrong here, and that we'll probably be better off as a nation if we face it and debate it than if we continue to pretend that there's nothing there and to be fearful that zombies or vampires or a terrible storm is going to get us. Thank you very much.